subscribe to our YouTube channel, Joy Learning TV.
Hello everyone, welcome to the SHS on Joy Learning channel. My name is Ernest Walter Aqua and I come your way today with economics. We are treating the topic, the concept of demand. I want you to stay put and listen. Like we do in economics, we hold all other factors constant and pay attention to this lesson, and I can assure you that by the end of this lesson, you would have a great knowledge as far as the concept of demand is concerned. By the end of this lesson, I expect you, the student, to be able to define the concept of demand. Also, represent this concept of demand on a function, on a table, and on a curve. In addition, students should be able to state the law of demand. Also define the market demand and define the change in quantity demanded as well as change in demand. Then lastly, differentiate between change in demand and change in quantity demanded. So let's get started. Before we talk about the definition of demand, I want us to consider these three scenarios. So scenario one, I wish to buy a car, but I don't have the money. I know some of you, or a good number of you, can relate to this. We wish to own our own cars, even at this level, but we don't have the money to do so. Scenario two, I have money, but I still want my dad to buy the dress. Yes. Many a times as a student, we think everything must come from our parents. Yes, so it's usual that even though we have money, we still want our parents to use their money to buy things we need. Then a third scenario, I will use my own money to buy a car and a dress. Now, when we consider these three scenarios, these may be the possible outcomes. The first scenario shows willingness from the consumer, but the ability to purchase the car is lacking. Yes, like we said, the student is willing to buy a car, but the means to do so is not there. In the second scenario, we also see the student having the ability to buy the dress, but lack the will. The student is not willing to use his or her own money to buy the dress. Now, when we consider the third scenario, we notice that the student or the consumer is willing, at the same time has the ability to buy both the car and the dress. And this situation describes demand. So anytime there is a willing and the ableness to purchase some goods at various prices, demand is described. So then let us define demand. Demand is the goods and services a consumer is willing and able to purchase at various prices over a given period of time. So let's go back to the scenario. Where you have the desire, but you don't have the will, it is not demand. It's just a potential demand. It only becomes demand when you have the willpower. When you have the will and you don't have the ability, that is also potential demand, not demand. So demand goes beyond desiring something. You need to desire and back it with the purchasing power, and that is what is referred to as effective demand. So in this case, effective demand occurs when a consumer backs his or her desire with a purchasing power. I hope you get it. So if the willingness and the ableness does not meet or complement your desire, demand is not achieved. Now, this idea of demand can be represented in 3 ways. There are ways to represent this idea of demand. And the first one has to do with the mathematical representation. The idea or the concept of demand can be represented in the mathematical sense. And that is termed demand function. So anytime you see a demand function, it is the mathematical representation of goods and services a consumer is willing and able to purchase at various prices over a given period of time. Another representation of demand is the demand schedule. Some people will say demand schedule. That is the tabular representation of demand. The idea of demand can be represented on a table. So when you see a table representing the concept of demand, it is termed demand schedule or schedule. Then we have the graphical representation of the concept of demand. And the graphical representation of the concept of demand is the demand curve. The demand curve. Now let's see how we can illustrate these representations to have better understanding. A typical demand function could be given as QD is equal to 400. QD is equal to 400, yes, minus 2p. So QD is 400 minus 2p. It doesn't mean that always our demand function would have 400 and 2p equating to quantity demanded. This is just an example. It can be any number. But what is very consistent with the demand function is the fact that there is always an inverse relationship between the quantity demanded and the price. So from this equation, we notice that quantity is positive whilst price is negative. And that is what we are talking about. One must be positive and the other must be negative to show that there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity. It is so because by nature, holding other factors constant, though, we always want to buy more at cheaper prices and buy less when the prices are expensive. So to have this, the QD in the function represents quantity demanded, and it also represents dependent variable. Then we have the P representing price or the independent variable. When we say QD is a dependent variable, point in time, the quantities that a consumer can purchase is dependent on the price. Anytime we want to buy, in most cases, the price determines the quantities we want to buy. Yes, you can relate that anytime we notice that a particular commodity is cheaper than we thought, we tend to buy more of it. Or if it is expensive than we thought, we tend to buy less of it. Yes, that is why we say quantity demanded is dependent on the price. So when it comes to price, it is independent in nature. It doesn't depend on anything as far as our analysis is concerned. So let us try this. Find quantity demanded with a given function up there when price is 8. That is I and II. Price is price is 4 and II price is 8. Now the second question is represent the information on a demand schedule, and the third one represents the information on a demand curve or represent the information graphically. Let's see how this is done. We will first write our function, and our function is given as QD is equal to 400 minus 2p. Now, if we want to find QD when price is 4, then we will set when price P is equal to 4. Then our QD will be equal to the 400 2p, and in this case the 2p, you represent the p with 4 like this. So we have QD is equal to 400 minus 8, and 400 minus 8 gives us 392 units. All right, so when P is 4, then our quantity demanded becomes 392. Now, when P is equal to 8, then our QD is equal to 400 minus 2P. In place of the P, we put 8 there, and our QD 16, and this gives us 384 units. Yes. So we've established the fact that when P is 4, our QD is 392, and when P is 8, our QD, which is the quantity demanded, is 384. So this is a functional illustration of demand. Now the next question, that is question 2, says we should find, or we should represent this information that we have functionally on a demand schedule. So let's see how we can represent this on a demand schedule. So on a demand schedule, we would have a table which has 2 columns. The first column will be the price, and the second column will be the quantity demanded. Yes. So we would have our price 4 and our price 8. From the calculation, when price was 4, our quantity demanded was 392. So we put 392 at the place where price is 4. Then we also look for the quantity demanded when price was 8, and we got 384. And we put a 384 at the place where quantity demanded was 8. So we label our table very well, and this becomes a typical example of a demand schedule or schedule. Now the last question says we should represent the information graphically, and that will give us a demand curve. To do so, we need 2 axes, the vertical positive axis and the horizontal positive axis. We represent the vertical axis anytime we are drawing a demand curve by price, and the horizontal axis will be represented by quantity demanded. Take note. So we are not drawing to scale, we are just sketching. If we have 0 here, then this will be price 4, this is price 8. Let us have 384 and 392. So when price was 4, the quantity is 392. So you trace to the quantity. Then when price is 8, quantity in this case becomes 384. So you trace that one also to the quantity. So from the table, we have 4 as the price, and quantity demanded is 392. We have 8 as the price, and the quantity demanded is 384. So in drawing the demand curve, you have price on the vertical axis, quantity demanded on the horizontal axis. So where you have price to be 4, the quantity demanded is 392. Where you have price to be 8, the quantity demanded is 384. You join the two plotted points together, and that gives you your demand curve. So you could see from the diagram that the demand curve is a curve which is sloping downward from left to right, and this shows a negative slope. From the table 2, we notice that as price is increasing from 4 to 8, quantity demanded is decreasing from 392 to 384. There is a clear indication that the relationship between price and quantity demanded, be it a function, be it a table, be it a curve, is inverse. So this brings us to the law of demand. And the law of demand states that all other things being equal, as the price of the commodity increases, the quantity demanded decreases. And as the price of the commodity decreases, the quantity demanded increases. There have been lots of researches to notice this inverse relationship between price and quantity. That is why it has been made a law. So take note. All that we've done so far, we were just talking about the demand pertaining to one individual. So now we are going to look at the demand in relation to people in the market. You know, in every market, we have individuals demanding. So we move on to the market demand, which is the horizontal. Market demand is the horizontal summation of individual demand in a given market. The word horizontal in the definition has a meaning. Now let's go back to the demand curve we drew. From the demand curve, we notice that the quantity demanded is on the horizontal axis, whilst price is on the vertical axis. So if we are talking about horizontal summation of individual demands, then we are talking about demand of quantities, or we are talking about summation of quantities of individuals, not the summation of price individuals bought the commodity, but the quantities of individuals. That is why we represent the market demand functionally as QDMKT equal to QA plus QB ellipsis to QN, where the QDMKT represents the market demand, QA is the demand for consumer A, QD is the demand for consumer B, and QN becomes a demand for the last individual in the market. So if you have 20 individuals in the market, then the demand for the first person plus the second person up to the demand for the 20th person put together becomes the market demand. For example, with a given individual functions, QDJ is equal to 50 minus P and QDH is equal to 70 minus 2P. Find the market demand price. Find the market demand when price is 10. Then represent this one on a demand schedule at the same time, a demand graph. Now, let us try to write these functions here. The first one is QDJ is equal to 50 minus P. So QDJ is equal to 50 minus P. Now the second function is QDH is equal to 70 minus 2P. So the second function QDH is equal to 70 minus 2P. Yes. So these are the functions. Let us try to substitute 10 into these functions to find the individual demands. So when P is equal to 10 for the first one, our QDJ is equal to 50 minus 10, and the answer is 40 units. With the second one, when P is equal to 10, QD is equal to 70 minus 2 into bracket the 10, and our QD in this case becomes 70 minus 20, and the answer is 50 units. Yes. So when we finish, our QD market, that is QD MKT, will be the quantity demanded for J plus the quantity demanded for H. And that gives us 40 plus 50, and the answer is 90 units. So our market demand in this case becomes 90 units. This is one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is you have your functions. QDH is equal to, the QDH is 50 minus P. Minus P. Then you have the QDG is equal to 70 minus 2P. What you do is you add these functions together. So we know that the QDH plus QDG gives us the QDMKT, or the demand in the market. Then 50 plus the 70 gives us 120. Then the P plus the 2P, and the P plus 2P gives us 3P. So what you have here now is the market demand function. Then we substitute price 10 into the market demand function. So when P is equal to 10, when we want to find our quantity demanded in the market when price is 10, we state our function QD MKT is equal to 120 minus 3 into bracket 10. So our QD MKT is equal to 120 minus 30, and that gives us 90 units. Now when we compare this 90 units for the quantity demanded in a market to the first approach, we will notice that it is also 90 units. So any of these two approaches will be acceptable in any given exam. It wouldn't be necessary to do both at the same time. You would have to choose one and you'll be good to go. From the question, we are supposed to represent this on a demand schedule. And to do that, this time we can choose to have 4 columns. So we have price on the first column. We have QD for the first individual, which is J. Then we have QD for the second individual, H. Then we have the QD for the market. Our price is 10. And when our price was 10, for J we had 40, and for H we had 90. So we put 40 at J and we put 50, at H. And when we put the two together, the market becomes 90. So we can represent the market demand schedule as this, or we can have the 2-column representation where you have price and the market demand straight away. So price is 10 and the market demand is 90. Any of the two is accepted. Lastly, it says we should represent it on a graph. So to represent this on a graph, as the last question will say, we would have our 2 axes, the vertical and the horizontal axis, where the vertical axis will be the price and the horizontal axis will be the quantity demanded. We have our price to be 10 and the quantity is 40 for the J, it is 50 for H, and the market is 90. So at price 10 for J, we have 40, and that will give us our demand. D, yes, this time it is DJ. Yes, the first one is DJ. So this is G, DJ. Then we come to 50 for the next one, and that is DH. Then 90 for the market. So that one will be the DMKT. So what it means here is that we are adding the DJ to the DH to get the market. This is one way of representing it, or we can just go straight, having our axis P, quantity demanded, QTYDD, have our price 10 and our quantity 90. Then you draw and label this DMKT. So any of these two will be okay for the market demand curve. Now we move on to change in quantity demanded. To understand this concept very well, we would use this illustration. Let's say you are given 2 cedis as your income and you want to go and buy kenkey. Now, if the kenkey has its price to be 1 cedi, you, the consumer, will be able to buy 2 balls with your 2 cedis. Now, if the price is changed to 2 cedis, you'll be able to buy just 1 ball of kenkey. Also, if the price changes from the 1 cedi to 50 pesos, then you would be able to buy 4 balls. Now, the changes in the quantities of kenkey bought by the consumer is dependent on the price. Now, as price is changing from 2 to 1, it is causing the quantity to change from 1 to 2. That is, initially, as the price was 1, 2 balls were bought, and now that the price has increased to 2, you are buying 1 ball. On the other hand, if the price is now 50 pesos, then the consumer is able to change from buying 2 balls to 4 balls. And this illustration represents the change in quantity demanded. Let's see this in the graphical sense. Change in quantity demanded will be the quantities of commodities bought as a result of changes in the price of the commodity. I would want to take that again. Change in quantity demanded is a change in the quantities bought as a result of the change in price of the commodity. So in the graph we have there, you would notice that the initial price, which is 1, gives us an initial quantity 2. And as the price increases from 1 to 2, the quantities bought decrease from 2 to 1. And as price decrease from 1 to 50 pesos, the quantities bought increase from 2 to 4. So you would notice that the changes in quantity demanded from 2 to 1 or from 2 to 4 is as a result of changes in the price of the commodity. Now, to change in demand, it is a bit different. Let us take note. When it comes to change in demand, it occurs when there is a change in the quantities bought, this time not as a result of the price of the commodity, but as a result of other factors apart from the price of the commodity. So from the diagram, you notice that the price remains at 1, but quantity changes from 2 to 4 or from 2 to 1. So it clearly shows that the changes in quantity from 2 to 4 or from 2 to 1 is not as a result of the price, because the price is constant, but rather it is as a result of other factors apart from price. Now let us try to distinguish between the change in quantity demanded and the change in demand. Now when it comes to change in demand, it occurs as a result of changes in other factors apart from price. But when it comes to change in quantity demanded, it is as a result of changes in demand or the quantities bought as a result of the price of the commodity. So take note, change in demand will occur as a result of other factors apart from price, whilst change in demand or change in quantity demanded will occur as a result of price. Now, when it comes to the second one, we are talking about a bodily shift of the demand curve when we are looking at change in demand. So from the diagram, you notice that with the change in demand, there is a bodily shift either to the left or to the right. Now take note, with this bodily shift to the right, as far as change in demand is concerned, is as a result of other factors apart from the price. And this means increasing demand. So anytime demand shifts to the right, it is an increasing demand, and when it shifts to the left, it is a decreasing demand. But when it comes to the change in quantity demanded, you would notice that it occurs along a particular demand curve. So when we move from price 1 to price 2, as a result, it is causing a change in the quantities from 2 to 1. It is occurring along a particular demand curve, which is not the case in the change in demand. Then also, change in quantity demanded occurs when there is a change in the real income, whilst change in demand occurs when there is a change in the nominal income. Now, when we talk about real income and nominal income, the nominal income is the value that exists as far as the income is concerned. But the real income is the amount of goods and services that the value of the nominal income can purchase. So you would notice that with a change in quantity demanded, as the price fell from 1 to 2, the income is still 2 cedis. So we are looking at the situation where price falls from this time 1 to 50 pesos. The income is still 2 cedis. And this same income, which could buy 2, is now buying 4. That means there has been a change in the real income. So this change in the quantity is as a result of the change in the real income. But when it comes to demand, it is different. Change in demand, that one has to do with a change in the nominal income. With the same price 1, you'll be able to buy 4 balls when your income increases from 2 to 4. And this change in income is a factor apart from the price. So take note. So today we've talked about the definition of demand, where we said effective demand is the desire backed by purchasing power. We've talked about how to represent demand mathematically, which is the demand function. We talked about how to represent demand graphically, which is the demand curve. How to represent demand in the tabular form, which is the demand schedule. We said when you add individual demands in the market, you get a market demand. And we also talked about the fact that when a change in quantities bought is affected by the price, it is a change in quantity demanded. But when the changes in quantities bought is affected by other factors apart from the price, then we are talking about a change in demand. Now let us try our hands on these questions to see if we really got the concept right. What is effective demand? Yes. So let us all define it. It is consumers' desire, which is backed by purchasing power. Thank you for that. And those who are not able to recall, do a little more reading and you would get it. Now let's distinguish between demand, change in demand, and change in quantity demanded. The bottom line is that change in quantity demanded is as a result of the change in price of the commodity, whilst change in demand is as a result of the change in price or other factors apart from the price. So take note. Now let us solve this question. With a given demand, 200 minus 0.4p. When p is 5, let us find the quantity demanded. And when p is 10, we find the quantity demanded as well as 20. Then we will represent this information on a diagram. I know you started working. Yes. I know by now you are on the verge of getting the first answer. Yeah. So to help ourselves, let us see the answers. For AI, we'll get 198. I hope your answer and mine are the same. Yes. So with a function, when you substitute 5 into the function and you subtract it from the 200, you get 198. At the same time, when you substitute a 10 into the function and you subtract it from the 200, your answer is 196. I know by now you've gotten the second one and your answer is the same as mine. Yes, you are doing very well. Keep it up. Let's be on the third function or the third question. So you substitute 20 into the function and you subtract it from the 200. That gives us 192. I hope you got that one too. Yes, I know some of you are still on the first one or the second one. Yes, our speed rates will not be the same. But what is important is that at this level, we would get our answers correct. So when we are representing this on a table, then we have the price and the quantity in different columns. Where price is 5, the quantity is 198, and when price is 10, the quantity is 196. When price is 20, the quantity is 192. Then when we represent it on the diagram, we will have something like this. The vertical axis will have the prices, and the horizontal axis will have the quantities. So when price is 10, quantity is 198. When price is 15, quantity is 196. And when price is 20, quantity is 192. Yes. If you've not finished, don't worry. Just take your time and do it. And with time, you would develop the dexterity to do it even faster. Thank you all for your time, and I know you've gotten something substantial with you as far as the concept of demand is concerned. My name is Ernest Walter Aqua, and you can call me Sir Walter. It is bye for now. See you next time.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Joy Learning TV.